We're in the TechCrunch studio today with Ping Lee, General Partner at Accel Partners in Palo Alto. Ping, welcome to the studio.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So we're here today to talk about big data broadly across consumer and enterprise, and I know that you and your partners of Accel have been really interested in big data. Can you talk to us just kind of generally about the firm's interest in big data and why you guys are so excited about it?
Yeah, sure. We've been investing in big data for quite some time right now. It's getting a lot of hype right now, but for us, it's been a kind of a long-term initiative. Just last year we had two of our big data companies, both ClickTech and Fusion.io, one in analytics, the other a flash storage company, go public. So it's been an area that we've been spending a lot of time in over the last couple of years. And some of our investments more recently, whether it's Cloudera or Couchbase, we've been seeing kind of the rise of big data and how it's really transforming industries and verticals.
So now when you say that there's a lot, you guys have been interested in big data for a while, but there's a lot of hype around it now. Let's just quickly separate that for people, right? What is the hype and excitement around it? Because clearly a lot of data is being generated at the user end of things. What's real? What's really going on?
I think there's two big trends. One is big data has been a term and a technology that's been primarily invented in a lot of the Web 2.0 areas. So whether it's Google, Facebook, Yahoo's of the world, have pioneered technologies such as Hadoop and others that have become really well adopted in the internet space. And that now has become mainstream. So a lot of those technologies have now started hitting the enterprise and hitting verticals and sectors that previously didn't have access to those technologies. And that's causing a whole wave of innovation in sectors beyond just Silicon Valley. So I think one of the trends I've seen is big data going mainstream outside the internet data centers. The second thing is I think there's a democratization of data analysis. So historically data was in the hands of a few Oracle DBAs and a couple, analysts that were real jockeys, statisticians, people with PhDs. What's happening now is big data is something that is accessible to everyone. Anyone can get access to big data. Google Analytics and all those different types of tools that become popular are now being used across enterprises and consumers. So I think that's what's also causing the kind of explosion of big data today.
And so if we look at different types of companies or industries, moving all the way from enterprise to consumer, that big data will impact, right? Like you mentioned Oracle.
Yep.
How do you see that flowing, right? You're talking about actually formation of new companies both at the back end and also at the application layer.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that progression?
Yeah, I think that's what gets us so excited about this new big data wave is if you fast forward in 5-10 years, I think there's going to be some real seminal software, hardware, technology companies that evolve and come out of this big data wave. And I think it comes up and down the stack. I think if you look at the data platforms, kind of where Oracle has dominated the relational database market, I think that's going under a major sea change right now, whether it's these NoSQL databases or Hadoop or some of these new real-time databases that are being invented as we speak. I think it's really going to power a whole new set of applications, right? So I think those data platforms are going to be new and very innovative, and I think they're going to yield a lot of applications that are on top.
So if we look at just like the pure technology layer of it,
yeah.
What's actually happening in terms, let's just say either networking or the database architecture,
yeah.
that could be poised to disrupt a company like Oracle, right?
Yeah.
Huge, enormous.
Yeah, I think the fundamental premise I think is that Oracle was created at a time where volumes were measured in terms of megabytes and gigabytes. These days, data is measured in terms of petabytes, terabytes, gigabytes. These are much larger scale scenarios. And I think the other big difference is historically, data was fit neatly in columns and rows. They fit neatly in a table. These days, they're unstructured data that are pictures, they're text streams, they're blocks.
Let's talk about those two pillars. So pillar number one is about the explosion in the size of data, right? And so you had mentioned earlier as well, like Flash being a big part of that story. Yep. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, I think what's really fundamentally changing is people are now using commodity components also to process a lot of this data. So one of the things that the internet data centers realize is you don't have to buy expensive SANs and NAS to power this stuff. You can use really commodity hardware and storage. In doing so, the other area that you want to add is kind of the right price performance ratio. And I think Flash has been this amazing layer of technology that's hit the data center. It's always been in the consumer space. We've had Flash in laptops and phones, but now it's becoming in the data center and creating a new storage hierarchy for the big data. So now you can manage big data at scale, but also do it at an effective price performance ratio, which is what Flash brings you.
I see. And now the second pillar, looking at whether the data is structured or not, you're saying it's now moving from tables, columns, and rows to
Yeah.
an unstructured set. What kind of challenges and opportunities does that present?
Yeah, I think the interesting thing around that is you can now analyze a whole new set of data sources that were historically thrown on the ground. Like you can now look at pictures, you can look at what's going on in your tweet streams, you can look at stuff that's gone on the web, but you can also look at log files that you weren't analyzing before. Like companies like Splunk, I think, have done a great job here. So I think there's really a lot of the explosion of data has not really been growing more data generated by your SAP ERP system. It's more by a lot of these other machine and user-generated sources. And that, I think, is a rich wealth of information that can guide a company in many different ways. And I think now that's being harnessed and extracted and valued.
Okay, and if we move over to the application side, certainly it sounds like what you're saying is there's going to be some B2B applications, right, built on top of all of this that can harness big data, and also maybe talk a little bit separately about how consumer websites, a lot of sites and applications that people use today are generating, infinite amounts of data as well about consumers and behavior. Yeah,
I think one of the most interesting trends we're seeing is once these platforms, these big data platforms like Hadoop, et cetera, start getting cemented, a lot of applications are getting built on top. And there's kind of two areas of application innovation that we're seeing. One is kind of data applications. These are applications that are geared for the analyst, right? So this is a business intelligence, this is data visualization. There's a whole new crop of really interesting companies that are now harnessing all the big data, presenting it to a data analyst to actually extract value from the data. I think the second set of applications that are interesting are the data-driven applications. These are more targeted towards the end user. That could be an employee in an enterprise or a consumer. But these are applications that you really don't know what's underneath the hood. You don't really not analyzing the data, but they deliver a new value. So an example of that is a company called Lookout, which is the mobile security space. So they basically are able to process all the threat data on everyone's mobile phones and then come out and with signatures and things to protect the user. It's really a data company at the end of the day, but for the user, they just know their phone's getting protected, right? So I think there's going to be a lot of those type of companies that get created that rethink existing or new categories by using the data underneath them. And I also think the mobile device is where we're going to see a lot of these new applications. It is the ultimate data capture device. It is with you 24/7. It's got more sensors now than it used to. It knows where you are and what time of day. So I think those will be really fertile platforms for these new data-driven applications.
Great. And so I know that recently at Accel, you guys have been, you have a fund dedicated to allocating to investments in big data, broadly speaking, and that you have some events and initiatives coming up. Maybe you can share with us a little bit what you guys are thinking and what you guys are planning to do this year.
Absolutely. So we announced a big data fund last November, I believe, at Hadoop World. And the goal was to kind of basically generate more interest and more excitement around this space with entrepreneurs. And we've seen some ideas that have been just fantastic up and down the stack, whether it's the data platform layers or the application layer, and it's really exciting to see the entrepreneurial activity. I think what also has come out of that has been an ecosystem has been evolving around big data. So universities have reached out, we've had CIOs and CTOs from service providers, enterprises across the globe wanting to understand what are the latest and greatest big data innovation. So because of that, we were putting together a conference in May 9th at Stanford, the Big Data Conference, to really bring together all these different parts of the ecosystem to really dig into what's next in big data.
And this conference that you're putting together is mainly focused on people who are working, right, rolling up their sleeves and working in big data, right?
Yeah, this is not a kind of another vendor-driven commercial sponsorship type event. We are really focusing on practitioners, whether they're entrepreneurs, technologists, academia. We have speakers from Stanford and others all participating as well. So it's really to dig into what's next and what are the really ground zero innovation going on.
So and now this gets more on the personal level. So one, if there's somebody out there who is noodling on a big data idea, they should just contact you directly about going to this conference.
Absolutely.
If they want to go.
I mean, I think the website's up. So
and then secondly is more just for people out there who are thinking about a big data idea, whether it's application or, on the infrastructure or networking side, what kind of advice would you give them, right? Maybe this is their first idea or they've been noodling on an idea, right, and haven't really thought about it. You've had the benefit of seeing, thinking about this for years and also seeing a lot of companies lately. Like, what kind of advice would you give from your perspective to maybe someone out there looking to do something like this?
One of the things I would say is this space is changing so fast and it's evolving very, very quickly, not only in the terms of the ecosystem, but also the technology. And I think it's really important for the entrepreneurs to really figure out, what's a sustainable technology trend that they can ride. I think there's going to be a lot of interesting ideas that kind of come and go, but there's going to be some that are more lasting. So I think finding and picking the technologies that you want to build on, I think is really important. I think there's a lot of awareness around Hadoop and how it's getting distributed, but there's also a lot of other technologies.
So what I'm hearing you say right there is that there are a lot of very smart people, right, looking at big data who have skills that a lot of other people do not have,
right,
and that the one potential trap of going in there is not looking at the ecosystem and seeing how it's changing. So their initial idea may be either too narrow or may box them into something that changes? Is that what you're saying?
I mean, I think the real risk in any category like this that's evolving so quickly, you pick something that ends up becoming irrelevant in a year or two, right? And right now, the number of open source technology projects out there is it's coming out by the minute, right? So understanding which are the ones that are really going to be durable and which are not, and which one to build your applications and technology on top of, I think are going to be really important.
Great. Well, thanks for coming in today, Ping, and good luck to you.
Thank you.
All right.